Imagine trying to lead a city where every decision you make could mean the difference between survival and total collapse, where feeding your people might mean working children to exhaustion, or where allowing compassion could doom the very society that you're trying to protect. That's the world of Frostpunk 2, and it's bloody brilliant. The game has just landed onto Xbox and also onto Xbox Game Pass, and after spending multiple hours within this frozen wasteland, I can tell you that it's not just a city builder. It's a moral gauntlet that will change how you think and how you feel within the strategy genre. Today, we're going to unpack everything though, from the story, the atmosphere and the brutal gameplay systems, to the performance on Xbox and the moments that made me laugh in guilt and cry in despair. With that though, my name is Fletcher and this is Xbox Nation, and here is my review and performance analysis of Frostpunk 2 on the Xbox Series consoles. To give you a very brief idea of the story, this one is set 30 years after the events of the first Frostpunk, and humanity is still trapped under the chokehold of a volcanic winter. Civilization has really dwindled into scattered pockets of survivors, and New London, your brand new city, is clinging on by a thread. You, as the brand new steward though, are tasked with turning desperation into survival by any means necessary. The setting isn't just a backdrop like some strategy games bring to the table. Instead, it's oppressive, unforgiving, and it constantly reminds you that the world is against you. One of my earliest gut punch moments was being asked whether parents could enter quarantine with their sick children. I did allow it, but then seconds later, a pop-up informed me that the mother had died and her husband was left grieving. These aren't just numbers on a screen, they're stories, and Frostpunk 2 forces you to carry their weight for your entire playthrough. Now, onto the gameplay, and if you're brand new to this franchise, especially on Xbox consoles, then don't panic. The tutorial in Frostpunk 2 does an incredibly good job of walking you through the very basics, that being breaking ice for resources, researching upgrades, passing laws, and so much more. The early hours do feel pretty manageable and almost utterly calm, but trust me, that calm really won't last for very long at all. Soon after this tutorial, you're juggling food, heating, healthcare, and social unrest all at one time. The idea tree that you also get access to a little bit down the line lets you then branch into innovations such as brand new fuel sources, insulation, and even risky tech choices that have positive and negative outcomes. If that wasn't enough though, there are also even laws that do come into play. You'll need to win support from all the different political factions within your settlement to pass them, and those deals rarely come without some compromises. For example, do you side with religious zealots to secure stability, knowing their policies might clash with your very own vision? Or do you gamble on industry-focused groups who demand harsher working conditions and also sort of slave-like labor? These aren't simple sliders or even checkboxes. Instead, they are real moral decisions that ripple throughout your city for hours afterwards, and you even get a real glimpse of how it's affecting the population, the production output, mental stability of your citizens, and so much more. I will be honest though, the brutal truth is, you will fail more than once in this game. You'll exile, you'll lose runs, and you'll even see your society collapse in real time. Each attempt really teaches you something new, and every downfall makes the eventual victories even sweeter. It's the gameplay loop that was so gripping within the realm of Frostpunk 2, and this is why it's garnered such attention online and shows the pedigree of 11-bit studios. What really elevates Frostpunk 2 though beyond its mechanics is in its incredible personality. The writing is audaciously sharp, very morbid and darkly hilarious. When I passed a law forcing kids into apprenticeships, the tunnel voice calmly announced, "Don't shield your apprentice from danger! This is how they learn." It's so cruel that you can't help but laugh and then instantly feel guilty for your very own choices as your people succumb to your oppressive rule. Visually though, the industrial 1800s aesthetic is quite stunning, and I really never expected that upon booting up the game for the very first time. Copper and burnt orange machinery glow against the icy blue void. Menus feel like aged parchment, and even the pop-up decision screens are decorated with graffiti scribbles. Add in that glorious soundtrack that blends howling winds with solemn symphonies, and you've got an atmosphere that seeps into your bones. It's the kind of game where you lean closer to the warm glow of the city on your very screen, even though it may be sweltering within your own living room. Survival in Frostpunk 2 though isn't just about resources. Of course that is an important aspect, but it's all about the politics and ultimately the divide that occurs due to your differing opinions and or choices. Factions will challenge you constantly, each with their very own demands and ideals based on religion, dictation, and so much more. For instance, maybe the Zealots want tighter moral laws, or the Industrialists want to exploit child labour for production boosts. You can't keep everyone happy, and that's the whole point of this game, and siding too heavily with one group can really backfire. This is a juggle of decision making and a proper requirement for you to use your mind to always think 2 steps ahead. The story mode right out the gate though is structured into different chapters with a few different difficulty options. Along the way though, you'll unlock new objectives as you stabilise New London, and these are accomplished by following a task list that is given to you towards the left hand corner of your screen. Honestly, I often found myself distracted by the smaller crises like crime waves, food shortages, and even sick children. That's the brilliance though of the entire game design, and why I got so blimmin' addicted to playing this game. The big goals obviously do matter, but the small fires feel just as urgent and is your ultimate decision on how you spend your time. However, when you're ready to break free of that campaign though, there's the Utopia building mode. This is different as it's a sort of sandbox playground where you can tweak your starting conditions and then experiment without the weight of the main story. So if you want to test how long you can survive without any food laws, or see what happens if you lean fully into authoritarian control, the mode encourages chaos in the very best way. It's also a great staging ground to figure out where to go within the story mode, and you can ensure you have your ideas together before progressing onwards. Well, onto the quite large section, which is definitely going to be a main highlight for a lot of you who are now playing on console for the very first time. And I'll first start off with the accessibility and how the controls play out on console compared to their PC counterparts. Of course, right out the gate, you do get a lovely tutorial, as I mentioned, and that does cover off the main controls and how you'll go about accessing the menus, different systems, and so much more. I will say that the team over at 11-bit Studios have done an impressive job of introducing a console control scheme that actually works right out the gate, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows from my own playthroughs. Cursors do work pretty well, the shortcuts and intuition to get to certain menus work, however there are some bugs and mishaps which I kept coming across. For instance, when going into a screen for research, it would suddenly not work, and my cursor, no matter which button I pressed, nothing happened. In this instance, I would essentially have to back out to the menu and then reload the game to get it to load up properly. I also found that the menu for trying to view stats was also a bit clunky, and I had to resort to my D-pad to find specific resource counters and so much more. Of course, it's not the worst that I've ever used, but compared to the likes of Age of Empires, which has a fantastic HUD and navigation tool, it did feel somewhat archaic. I will say though that the general movements, looking into the different monitoring sections and also choices, was relatively easy, and it was rather intuitive after fiddling around with the controls and getting the hang of them after a few hours of play. I don't feel like the controls here are up to snuff right out the gate, and I will see a lot of players picking up this game either getting confused or frustrated, and it's a real shame because if you do stick with Frostpunk 2, it works incredibly well. I do also want to highlight as well from my own testing that mouse and keyboard support does also work on both of the Xbox Series consoles, so if for any reason you don't want to use the controller control scheme, as I know many of you probably don't for a strategy game, you can plug in both your mouse and keyboard and it will work instantaneously. It then kind of rectifies the issues that I do have with the HUD at the moment, and it also makes it incredibly easy to monitor both of your settlements. Now, onto performance, and I will say it's a pretty middling experience across both the Xbox Series consoles. On the Xbox Series X, I did come across quite a few performance dips, no matter how chaotic the landscape became, and that was across both the quality and also the performance modes. I did also find that these lag spikes also became more prevalent the further that I went within the campaign, and sometimes within areas that had no right to even lag spike. I will give the game some credit though, it looks bloody gorgeous on a 4K OLED TV, and the sound design also goes hand in hand to make this one of the most beautiful strategy games available on your Xbox console. I was still surprised though that I did come across some performance issues, as the game is one of the most basic in its nature due to that frozen wasteland. I do have to say though that when the neon lights, the flashes of electricity and the snowstorms come in, they're utterly stunning when in motion. On the Series S though, I also noticed some dips in frame rate, especially once the city grew larger, but it was never a point where it was unplayable. Out of the gate on the Series S, you also get a performance and a quality mode, which is incredibly interesting to see, especially on this lower end console, and it's utterly fantastic. Luckily, since this game is not an action game, the stutters on the Series S really never ruined my playthrough. They did break immersion from time to time, but never as much as the Series X. I'm hopeful that patches will iron out these issues across both the consoles, especially as this release matures, but it is a shame as the development team have now had over a year to fix any of its issues before the console release. Like I mentioned, it's not egregious, but the lag spikes can get pretty large from time to time, and it does break that immersion. In terms of the visual fidelity though, on both the series consoles, it's really good news. On the Series S, it looks really good as well, especially within the performance mode. Of course, this isn't the most technically advanced game we see today on our Xbox consoles, but compared to other releases, the visuals here don't take as much of a hit, especially compared to other modern day titles on the Xbox marketplace. I am puzzled though as to why the Series S didn't hit nearly as much as the Series X during certain scenes, and it did make me wonder what sort of drawbacks they made on the Series S, as to me, both the images on screen now do look quite close in terms of its detail. I do feel though, if you have Frostpunk on either of your Xbox consoles, you're going to be majorly surprised by what you get out the gate in terms of its visual fidelity. Do be warned though, there are some glaring issues when it comes to frame rates, and I hope these get patched in later updates. So, should you be playing Frostpunk 2 on your Xbox Series consoles? Well, if you're looking for a cozy, stress-free builder, this isn't the one for you. This is a game of frostbite, famine, and tough decisions that will haunt you long after you switch off your Xbox. But if you crave a city builder that challenges both your tactical brain and your moral compass, then Frostpunk 2 is one of the most rewarding strategy experiences that you'll find this year. It's harsh, it's depressing, and it's utterly brilliant, frame rate dips aside. Yes, it does have a couple of stumbles, especially when it comes to its console controls at the moment and also the frame rates, but I do urge you to try and power through those as the game underneath is so bloody good. If you do have a PC, of course, play it that way, as you will negate a lot of these frame rate issues. But if you have an Xbox console and you want to play a strategy game, this is easily one of the top 5 strategy games available on Xbox right now in 2025.